Welcome again to this next video lecture. So we were discussing about the development of human rights, which movements, which documents, which struggle movements were responsible for development of human rights. These things we were discussing. So before proceeding further, let me have a revision little bit. So in previous lecture we studied about the American Bill of Rights of 1791, then French Declaration of the Rights of Man of 1789. So again we discussed the Declaration of the Rights of Man as a product of French Revolution, and revolution that reached in climax in 1789, and the National Assembly swept away the ancient feudalism and serfdom. The slogan of the revolution of French, that is French Revolution, was liberty, equality, and fraternity. And the French Revolution gave a fatal blow to absolute monarchy and a death blow to feudalism and led to the establishment of French Republic. So, to make that French Republic a democratic country, that slogan was formulated. That was liberty, equality, and fraternity. Or we can say that the French Republic was formed on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And the French Revolution enabled the people to enjoy different kinds of rights. Okay, those includes right of liberty, equality, and fraternity, as I said before. Again, the government should be not only for the people but also by the people. Means whatever that French Republic was formed, which was committed to serve the people, and that government was formed by the people of French country. Okay, so on 17th August 1789, the National Assembly proclaimed the rights of man and of the citizens, and those rights were formulated in 17 articles, and it declared that men are born free and equal in rights. So the aim of all political association is to preserve the natural rights of man. Okay, and we also studied the yes, we also studied the uh, rights, also studied the rights that man and citizen have been recognized, and those rights were included that men are born, remain free equal in remain free and equal in rights. The liberty consists in the ability to do whatever doesn't harm another, and hence the existence of that natural rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to other members of society the enjoyment of same rights. So law can determine these limits. So no man can be indicted or arrested or detained except in cases determined by law, and all men should be presumed innocent until judged guilty, and no man may be disturbed by his opinion even in religion, provided that their manifestation doesn't trouble public order as established by law. So such activities or such struggle movements or such documents we or actions we observed in previous lecture. So today in this lecture we are going to study next revolutionary movement, that is the Bolshevik Revolution of Russia or Russian Revolution of 1917. So here the Russian was the greatest social uprising of the world since the French Revolution. So French Revolution was happened in the 1789, and the Russian Revolution was happened in 1917. Okay, but it was the greatest social uprising, greatest social revolt in the world since the French, after the French Revolution. So Russian Revolution took place in 1917, and it was the first successful communist revolution of the world. So the revolt was against the naked exploitation of the masses by the autocratic ruler and the wealthy feudal nobles. Means there were some class of people available existed in the society of Russia. Those were called themselves autocratic ruler, and those were wealthy people or wealthy noble persons. Okay, and they had the power, they had the control over the common people, and against this there was a social uprising was happened. Social uprising means social revolt was happened. So the revolution brought a third change in the political, social and economic life of the people, and established the first proletariat government of the world. And for regarding this, H.G. Wells concerned it as the greatest event after the advent of Islam, as H.G. Wells concerned has given this statement. So it is true that the French Declaration proclaiming liberty, equality, and fraternity for all, but liberty and equality were soon proving to be empty slogans for poor peasants and factory workers. Means these principles were existed in Russia, in French Revolution, in French Declaration, okay, but somehow it was not enjoyed, or it was not given to the peasants, poor peasants or factory workers, and it was the lacuna there. So hence, beginning the mid 19th century, the demand for social security and social justice, in addition to civil and political rights, appeared in the forefront of socialist movement. And the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia 1917 went a step further, okay, for giving the social justice or political justice or civil justice to the people in the form of Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. It emphasized that economic and social rights were as important as the civil and political rights. As far as civil and social rights are concerned, likewise the social rights, civil rights and political rights are also important, and it was considered in the Bolshevik Revolution of Russia. So many economic and social rights had been included in the Soviet constitution. Then it is gratifying to note that the socialist revolution in Russia introduced socio-economic dimensions to the concept of rights, which were neglected in the events and the documents of English, American and French Revolution. So socio-economic rights some were neglected. It is said here socio-economic dimensions or socio-economic rights were somehow neglected in the events or documents of English, French and American revolutions. While the three revolutions emphasize the first generation, that is civil and political rights. Means there are some generations, and generation wise these civil and these rights are classified there. So in the first generation, that is civil and political rights, the October Revolution of Russia popularized socio-economic rights such as the right to work, social security, protection of the family, right to adequate standards of living, right to education, health, and right to join trade unions. Such kind of rights were emphasized in the revolution, in the third revolution. Then these are second generation rights of positive right or positive rights. First generation rights are considered as negative rights, and second generation rights are considered as positive rights. So the human rights which we are in, which we are discussing, or we are studying here, that we have a study, that is American Bill of Rights, French Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, and we will discuss little bit about the UDHR of 1948, that is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So see here, when it was adopted in 1948. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations on 10th of December 1948. Okay, and the declaration is not a legally binding document. It is an ideal for all mankind. So it is not binding. This UDHR is uh, not binding legally, not a legally binding document, but is an ideal for all mankind. Okay, means according to this, every human being has natural rights, natural rights, or all have human rights. And in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, it proclaims a common standard of achievement for all people and all nations. So it is a common standard. common standard of achievement for all people and all nations, achievement of basic human rights or natural rights. So in its final form, it comprises of a lot of civil, political, economic, social and cultural rights to which all persons are entitled. Means all persons are having having civil, political, economic, social and cultural rights. We can say CPR, civil and political rights, and ES, ESCR. ESCR means economic, social and cultural rights to which all persons are entitled. Means such kind of rights are given to all persons. Okay, so Universal Declaration is a declaration of principles directed to the peoples of the world. Means it gives guarantee to all people across the world having such rights. So this has been considered as one of the greatest achievements of the United Nations, and it has been maintained that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has had a significant influence on the development of standards that states are not only expected but also has legal commitment to be respected. So that responsibility is given to the state government, whether that human rights are really given to all common people or people in the state or not. So that it is committed to the state, and it is committed also to the respect given to people or not, it is observed by that particular state. So we observed here the UDHR, and now last thing is International Covenants on Human Rights. So the demand, to meet the demand for a legally binding document or the protection of the human rights, two international covenants were approved. Overall, UDHR was not a legal binding document, but here these two international covenants were approved by the General Assembly on 16th December 1966, and these are the legally binding to all countries, all nations in the world. So these are one international covenant on civil and political rights, and second is international covenant means contract, or we can say pact, contract. So international covenant on economic, social and cultural rights. So on international level, that those contracts were contracts are done for observing the civil and political rights, as well as for observing economic, social and cultural rights of the people. So what is important about the two UN covenants is that they contain international mechanism to monitor and oversee that the obligation of human rights are observed by state parties to the covenants. Okay, so two supervisory bodies, that Human Rights Committee under ICCPR means International Covenant on Culture on Civil Political Rights. ICCPR means International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights under ICESCR, that is International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, under ICESCR, consisting of 18 human rights experts, are created to help state parties to the covenants in fulfilling these obligations. So human rights are generally classified into first, second and third generation rights. Now you will clear these ideas, what is the first generation, and accordingly what are the rights included or evolved in that generation. So human rights have evolved and developed as a reaction to oppressive institutions, policies and practices of the rulers. Okay, let me repeat here. Human rights have evolved and developed as a reaction. These are developed as a reaction to oppressive institutions, policies and practices of the rulers. So these are the first generation rights, and the second and third generation rights are concerned to be responses to the economic and political operations that was the byproduct of colonialism and industrial capitalism. Because of this colonialism and industrial capitalism, some people enjoying their basic human rights and some people were not. So that's why these rights are evolved. So see here, Carol Vasek, former director of Human Rights and Peace Division of the UNESCO, was the major proponent of the classification of rights into three generations. And he stated that civil and political rights constitute the first generation rights, and social, economic, and cultural rights constitute the second generation rights. Okay, see here, these are belong to first generation rights, and these are belong to second generation rights. Okay, so and the group rights such as the right to development and environmental rights form the third generation of rights. The group rights are including right to development and environmental rights. Okay, so the first so here classification of these human rights are given here. Classification, the title here, you might not observe this, but title is that the classification of human rights. So the first generation rights, that is civil and political rights, provide for certain basic rights that guarantees for an individual in relation to state. They involve the inviolability of the individual against any invasive action by the state. Then these are distinct from second generation rights, which generally require action by the state to provide certain basic needs or amenities to the individual. And in other words, civil and political rights demand freedom from coercive action by the state. Coercive means those are destroying your, means humiliating actions by the state against an individual, while economic, social, and cultural rights necessitate certain actions and provisions by the state in order for it to fulfill its obligations. Again, first generation rights are included in the articles 3 to 21 of the UDHR, while article 22 to 27 deal with second generation rights. So the demands have come from some developing countries to focus on some group rights, as it is claimed that there were not this category, this category is not available, that is group rights. But some developing countries focused that there should be some group rights, and it is claimed that their societies are less individualistic than Western countries. So consequently, third generation rights have been developed to provide for the relation between individual, the collectivity, and the state. And the third generation rights include the right to self determination, right to development, right to participate in and benefit from the common heritage of mankind, and the right to a healthy environment, amongst many other collective rights. So, civil and political rights cannot be enjoyed in the absence of basic social, economic, and cultural rights. Okay, and the interdependence of these rights must be acknowledged. Interdependence means civil political rights are interdependent with social, economic, and cultural rights, and the interdependence of the rights must be acknowledged and provided for so as to ensure a better life. So all, if you have all these rights, then you can live a better life. In short, we can say that first generation rights are related to liberty, second generation rights to equality, and third generation rights are related to fraternity. So here again classification is given. Civil and political rights include right to life and liberty, freedom of speech and expression. Economic, social, and cultural rights include right to education, right to work, and right to food and housing. And third generation rights include group or collective rights, these are belong to first generation, these are belong to second generation, and these rights are belong to uh, group rights. Okay, so or third generation. So right to development, environment related rights, and solidarity rights. So see here, first generation rights are mainly related with protection rather than realization. Means civil and political rights are related to protection rather than realization. Therefore they are known as negative rights. Okay, they are related to protection only, so they are known as negative rights. Whereas second generation rights are concerned, these are the second generation rights, that is the right to education, work, and food and housing. These are related to concerned with the realization of economic, social, and cultural rights ensured by the government for the people. So it is positive rights, means these rights should be given to the people, and the state should ensure those rights, whether it is given to all people or not in residing in that state, residing in the state, a particular state. So it is the duty of the government to ensure these rights to people, and in order to ensure these rights, state is responsible to provide social provision or services, so that all human beings can enjoy these rights, which is related to adequate wage, food, clothing, health care, education, etc. As per the view of now see here, health care, food, housing, means you might get the idea now that government is taking care of common people. Hmm? Uh, for example, COVID-19, you are right now getting the experience, worst experience of the outburst of this COVID-19. Okay, uh, and in this situation government is saying you to take the precautions, and indirectly government is also taking the care of the health of those common people who are affected by the COVID-19. Okay, as per the view of ESW Pinto, the third generation or solidarity rights only makes sense if defined as a collective level. And he further says these rights include the rights to economic development, environmental rights, right to peace, humanitarian rights, etc. So the World Conference on Human Rights of 1993 proclaimed the Vienna Declaration and programs of action, and that declaration asserted that, means there was another declaration, that is Vienna Declaration, and in that declaration asserted that all human rights are universal, indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated. So the declaration also stated that human rights and fundamental freedom would have to be respected and promoted by all states, irrespective of their political, economic, and cultural systems. So the next, the first generation rights, that those are International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. What is mentioned here? See, the United Nations prepared International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Who prepared this? Who prepared this? ICCPR, United Nations. Okay, United Nations prepared International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in 1966, which contains a lot of civil and political rights. And the various rights contained in the Covenant on the civil and political rights are not few rights. These are the rights that had developed in course of a long period of time, since the time of Greek city-states, and concretized in the form of Magna Carta of 1215, the Bill of Rights of the American Declaration of Independence, and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. So these rights were also included in the European Convention of Human Rights and in inter-American and African instruments. So it also manifested in the constitution of many countries. So the International Covenant on Economic, this is the second generation. This is second generation human rights. See, the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights is signed in 1996. Both the covenants are signed in 1966. As the main source of origin of the civil and political rights is considered to be the American and French Revolution. So economic and social rights are considered to be originated in the Russian Revolution of 1917 and in the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. So the significance of the Paris Peace Conference was the establishment of the International Labour Organization. ILO was established because of this Paris Peace Conference, which laid emphasis upon the concept of social justice by proclaiming that peace can be established only if it is based upon social justice. Means if there is social justice, then you can establish a peace, and that the failure of any nation to adopt humane conditions of labor is an obstacle in the way of other nations which desire to improve the conditions in their own countries. So the former American President Roosevelt was the first man who put hope for an instrument dealing with the economic and social rights. In his message to Congress in 1944, President Roosevelt referred to the four essential freedoms, that is, the freedom of speech and expression, freedom of any person to worship in his own way, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, to which he looked forward as the foundation of future world. So these four kinds of freedoms were proclaimed by Roosevelt, President Roosevelt. So freedom from want, it may be argued, formed the basis on which the concept of economic and social rights were formulated. And he stated that people who are hungry and out of job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. Means we should give the rights, such these four rights, to the people, hungry people also. It was the meaning, it was his explanations, that Roosevelt's explanations. So in his opinion, true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. And this is absolutely right here, because if you have economic security and independence, then in real sense we have individual freedom. So Louis, now next third generation contains the cultural collective rights or group rights. Okay, so Louis B. Sohn has argued that individuals are also members of such units groups or communities as a family, religious community, and it includes social club, trade union, professional association, racial group, people, nation and state. Therefore, that international law not only recognizes inalienable rights of individuals but also recognize certain collective rights exercised jointly by individuals who are grouped in to larger communities, including people and nation. So these things we have studied. Again, see here, last point here we will discuss, that is opinion of Karek Vasek, who says that collective uh, collective rights can be realized only through the concerted efforts of all the actors on the social scenes. All the actors means family, let me clear, these are the actors, social actors, we can say social club, trade unions, professional associations, family, religious community, etc. are considered as a social actors. So on the see here, through the what he correct was says, the collective rights can be realized only through the concerted efforts of all the actors on the social scene, the individual, the state, public and private bodies, and the international communities. So the effective exercise of collective rights is a precondition to the exercise of other rights, political or economies or both. The most cherished belonging to the third generation rights are the right to self-determination, means we can determine ourselves. So the right to development and the right to peace. So the third generation rights includes which are also called here collective rights, uh, and these third generation rights are the right to self determination, the right to development, and right to peace. Means we as a people we can self determine ourselves, then we have right to develop ourselves, and we have a right to live with peace, and we have a right to give others, let others live in peace. So these are the third generation human rights, or we can say collective rights. So let us stop here. We may proceed again in next lecture. We may discuss the India's Charter of Freedom in the next video lecture. So till then, have a nice day and thank you.